Hello, my name is Monster Hunter, and there are links in the description in case you haven't seen anything yet for all the weapons and the IGN Japan gameplay. Since the information shown in the weapon chart is universal at this point, I'm going to summarize what's shown in the IGN playthrough and highlight details that might have been missed. But first, here are all of the attacks that I have confirmed are in this game so far. Please feel free to include anything that I may have missed in the comments. Heavy Slam requires 2 swings just like in Rise, and provides the Power Axe buff, which increases the damage and fill rate from axe attacks. In Iceborne, Heavy Slam buff only affected part damage modifier, while in Rise it affected both part modifier and amp state fill rate. It seems that in Wilds, it doesn't even touch the amp state. A question I have about this is if they mean the axe damage increases, or just the part modifier again. The sword mode counter, aptly named Counter Rising Slash, will consume quite a bit of sword gauge to activate. If you miss or don't parry an attack, it will just slash upwards. However, if you do successfully counter, you will take reduced damage, gain a portion of the switch gauge cost back, and deal 2 swings afterwards. I want to formally say that this commenter was correct. Kudos to you, fam. I'm probably gonna message you or reply to that comment in order to let you know that you were right. Forward overhead slash returns, and I believe it is used as forward plus circle, as it isn't necessarily shown here in the button guide. This appears to be the new draw attack for the axe mode. Traditionally, draw attacks were side slash. Offset Rising Slash seems to have 2 different properties, as this attack string sees its rising once, while the one we saw in the trailer was done twice. Perhaps it has an individual use for the triangle plus circle, and has the 2 strikes when done in a combo, such as from side slash or from this new draw attack. Regardless, landing this offset attack will consume health but also regenerate a large amount of switch gauge on parry. The 2 follow-up options are Heavy Slam or Morph Slash. While using Heavy Slam, you also recover a decent amount of gauge as well. And here's where we may have been mistaken with Invincible Gambit, as the animation looks similar, but instead it's the follow-up Heavy Slam, where the grapple hook comes out, attaches to the monster, pulls you forward, and the 2 swings happen, as seen from the side by side. Last thing to note about this, the Morph attack follow-up from this Heavy Slam variation is actually Morph Rising Double Slash, which was introduced in Rise. Next up, we see Morph Double Slash being used after a failed Counter Rising Slash. The animation looks wonky, so maybe it isn't finished or polished up yet, but that's definitely it. The attack didn't generate very much switch gauge, so it might be viable in damage more than meter generation. Also, I noticed the switch gauge doesn't increase with morph attacks anymore unless axe attack lands. That's unfortunate, but it might be playing into this game's identity for the weapon. While mounted, you have the option to knife the monster or strike with the axe. These strikes actually have decent gauge fill rate, so it might be more beneficial than just stabbing during certain situations. Now, thankfully, the mounted finisher raises the amp state gauge, even though the amount is pretty much negligible. Speaking of amped gauge, when amp state is achieved, the switch gauge was actually bumped up significantly. Take a look at this. Full release slash looked quite underwhelming here because of the way it was used. Rather than positioning to the head, the player remained on the hind legs, which seems to be a tough spot for Doshot. Huh. Either way, we can see that it consumes a hell of a lot of switch gauge to use it, and you're left in a recovery animation. I can see various moves that can follow up this attack, but I wonder if it's worth the follow-up. Lastly, if you weren't aware, it's only usable in amp state. One last clip I have for you is this elemental discharge into full release slash, where the player's switch gauge was basically near 0. Only 1 slash comes out, which must be due to the meter being empty. Something interesting to note is that full release slash seems to happen faster after a discharge, as opposed to its individual use. Almost like how double slash into elemental discharge works. Last point of interest, The follow-up offset rising slash regenerates a stupid amount of switch gauge. Basically over 30% was regenerated. There's two implications. Either the follow-up attack after full release is designed to grant increased gauge regeneration, or you regen more gauge while below the 30% threshold. Gotta wait to see. Now that's all I have on the weapons so far. Hopefully down the pipeline there's more to witness than just this. My personal thoughts on the weapon is that it seems like they got rid of the morph gauge generation of Rise in favor of successful axe attacks to give the axe mode some agency. It's not a bad idea, honestly, and it looks like it has been executed quite well. You create situations where you fully expend the switch gauge, morph back to axe to generate meter, and repeat. What I really want to know is if it's worth it to spam morph double slash considering how much gauge is used up by these sword mode attacks in this game. So I can't wait to get my hands on that demo and just poke and prod every detail, but for now, that's all I have for you, and until next time.